didn't tell me you were having a holiday special over tonight.
Come on in, Bubs. Care to stick around for some soft focus and sparkle filters?
I'd love to.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we wrap up the hottest stories from 2024. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 463, 2024, in review. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week we're going to look back at the year 2024 and highlight the news that made the most impact throughout the year. We're going to start it off on a bright note. We look back to ResiWeek episode 416, where we talk about layoffs. Okay, maybe not so bright, but we saw some big tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google make significant cuts to their workforce, and unfortunately, our industry got some of those cuts as well. We talked to Eric Smith and Jeremy Glowacki about these market shifts and what it might mean for the year ahead.
I think that it's relevant to our industry in just the sense that we're part of the tech business, but I don't think that it directly applies so much because we're such a niche within this bigger industry. And you talk about big tech and the way that they operate and the volume of employees that they have. And, you know, we have a few companies in our industry that are fairly large, but I mean, they're not in the level of an Intel or a Microsoft or that type of company. And, you know, obviously you do see Crestron having some layoffs, but I would imagine that's probably a fairly small amount compared to what some of these other companies are dealing with. So, I mean, it's definitely an indicator of some kind of an economic issue, and that always ties into the folks who are paying for these systems that are going in the CI channel. Any blip in the stock market or economic woes can affect someone's confidence in their willingness to spend big dollars on their home and buy systems that maybe aren't essential to their day-to-day. You know, there are parts of what we do that are toys, and there are parts that are utilities at this point. We're getting more and more into the utility phase, so hopefully we're less affected by the whims of someone's decision to spend some money on their home to improve it. But, you know, we're still talking about people who are emotionally attached to their, you know, their I guess their homes, but their portfolios, that type of thing, and they can react in a negative way if they see stories about tech, you know, struggling. So I don't think it really affects us from a day-to-day in terms of personnel and that type of thing or access to products, but it could definitely be, you know, a negative impact in a broader sense. So that's the way I look at it.
That's a good point. Eric, when I read these, when I try to cover this, and the one that really hit me was Wayfair, for a couple of reasons, but one of the analysts I was listening to referenced what it means because they scaled up dramatically during COVID because people were shopping at home and renovating their homes, et cetera. And then as we've come out of the pandemic, obviously they're watching their numbers kind of tumble back to where they were pre-pandemic. And the analyst I was listening to was reflecting that in terms of home renos in general and some other numbers that were related to that. But we see a lot of right sizing, restructuring, yada, yada, yada. You know, those catchphrases are thrown around. As we see this happen, and as we see, kind of to Jeremy's point, a lot of these are kind of executive positions that are being eliminated. Does that affect our, you know, kind of market opportunity as we're moving forward in our industry?
I think it can. Obviously, if there's fewer executives that have jobs and the guys that are our typical customers, that can cause challenges. But what I've seen, at least with the integrators I talk to all the time, they have more of a hard time just hiring enough guys to do the jobs they've got. So maybe they might get a couple fewer jobs, but they might just slow down their own hiring. I'm not an economist, but what when I do talk to my money manager guy, what he's telling me that he's seeing is all the capital that came into the market during the pandemic and after, just all that money that flowed in, is still here. And so that's why stocks don't tend to be going down. But unemployment's also in a good position. I mean, we're seeing all these layoffs, but the unemployment numbers don't seem to be going up. I don't know what's going on, but it's pretty hard to have a recession or real bad challenges when there's full employment and there's plenty of capital in the markets.
Now, I hope you weren't expecting things to get any lighter, because our next topic is all about outages. This year, we saw some serious technical failures in different verticals, from the massive CrowdStrike outage in July to a network failure from AT&T in February. Back in ResiWeek episode 420, we sat down with Joe Whitaker and Seth Johnson to discuss what, if anything, integrators can do when services take a turn for the worst.
This might have been a software update, but it was one of those Russian ones. So you know how those could go aside sometimes. But the outage was interesting because it wasn't just in some areas of the United States. It wasn't just cell coverage. It did affect some hardline fiber trunks that fed houses internet. So it was like a really big outage. But from our side, what we should always tell customers is, and it's always that liability statement, right? It's like, we're only liable for the end of your hand, that corner of your house. Anything that happens outside of that, you need to be calling your cell company. You need to be calling your ISP. I told you 6 months ago you needed to turn Wi-Fi calling in your settings on your phone, because we don't sell cell phone repeaters anymore. All of those things, those need to be put up out front, because an integrator does get those calls when it's something that's totally no control of theirs. But they have to put that up front, whether it be putting it into the contract, putting it in a piece of paper, putting it in service contracts, or just telling them. You know what I mean? Integrators have to be a little more upfront about what they're actually responsible for. And that's been a problem for as long as I've been in this industry. Friends of mine have gotten themselves in trouble for not drawing the line. Here's where, Seth knows this story. Now, this is as far as we go. Where your curb is outside, anything past that, not my problem. I'm sorry, I can't control the airwaves. But on the conspiracy side, there is an answer to your question, Matt. We will know in about 24 months what caused this when you see the commercial for the lawsuit. Remember that day you couldn't pay your electric bill because your cell phone didn't work. We are now doing a class action lawsuit against AT&T for not having proper cyberware to stop the Russians from doing a nefarious update. So, I mean, we eventually will know. But it is funny how Seth is a software guy, so he'll probably have the answers for this. But you have Department of Homeland Security involved, FBI involved, and this shows how very little regulation our government actually has on companies like Facebook, AT&T. Oh, you want to investigate? Sorry. No, you can't come into our building. We'll let you know if it was a hack or if not. And we won't tell you if it's hacked, if it's going to make us look bad, because we do have investors. So the software side, I'll let Seth have all that. But all those things did totally run through my mind. Because,
I'm just really glad that you gave that entire speech from a dark room.
Yes.
Backlit.
It's my backlit.
If you're just listening, Joe's mostly backlit in a dark corner of his house. Seth, this gave me eerie memories of when Rogers up here in Canada went down for over 72 hours, and the same kind of thing happened. They went down. There was a lot of speculation about what caused it. They went with the same sort of software issue, problem. One switch broke and the whole internet across the country went down. This could be as simple as somebody literally trying to do a little software update that bricked something and it just cascaded. Does that happen? Is that possible? Is this just dumb luck?
No. I mean, it's entirely it's entirely possible that it was someone working at 4 a.m. pushing out a software update that didn't work, or a configuration file that wasn't compatible. And it's one of those things we never expected someone to ever write this configuration file wrong, because why would they ever do that? And it just has, like you said, a cascading effect that that shuts down the entire network for, I don't know, it's like 5 hours. So it's a good bit of time for most people. I don't think I got mine back until that afternoon, but yeah, I mean, I like just to kind of, I feel like we're continuing the show from last week where it was like, you're the last one to touch it. So it's your fault.
Yeah.
with this, you know, like it's one of those things. It's like everything's down and you were the last one here. So I'm going to call you and tell you to come out and fix it, but I can't because your ISP's down, you know, that kind of thing. From a software development standpoint, this happens all the time. And the reason I really don't think it is a state actor or anything like that is I think they would have to, well, maybe not in this case, but I think they have to mostly within a few days say that happened by law now. Like there's a law out there, either stateside or federal side, where they do have to come out and say, we were hacked and here is the length of or the how much they've got into it. But I'm not sure about this. It's more of an infrastructure thing. So it will be interesting to see what did cause this and whatever portion.
And that's why I'm with Matt. I'm with Matt. It's a conspiracy, 100%, because companies like AT&T have things that have redundancies. Like, you know, this one, you know.
You would think.
This one server ranch is bad. We just flip switch, boom, we're on the other one. You're back up in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Facebook a couple of years back. We were just talking about this before the show. They took the Facebook domain and on their router, on their edge router, sent the entire domain to null, which basically means all the traffic around the entire world was now routed to nothing, absolutely nothing. And that included the access control to the building that had the server in it that they needed to go reset. So they had to take a chainsaw to break into the building to actually get to the server. And just like you said, it's a cascade of issues that happen. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these systems, especially when you get into these large networks, large companies like Facebook, they aren't I made that mistake, let me reboot this system and we're back up. It is a full-on emergency stop. We got to start these processes to make sure everything comes back online without blowing everything else up. And I can totally see a bad configuration or bad software update doing this, but we'll see. We'll see over time what happens, what really happened, that kind of thing. Hopefully we'll get a good postmortem.
We never had this problem with CDMA. It's 5G, man. I'm telling you, it's 5G.
Now, I'd love to say that this next story is finally some great and uplifting, interesting news. The only problem is that I wasn't there to enjoy it. Seemingly out of nowhere in April, Residio announced that they would be acquiring Snap One for $1.4 billion. Yes, that was $1 billion. Of all times that I had to go on vacation, so luckily, our favorite grandma, Mr. Tim Albright, chatted with Jason Knott and Brian Klautsky back in ResiWeek episode 427 about what this deal would mean for our industry.
Right out of the blue, I just have to say, to me, a big shocker. This was not on my radar. If this was on anybody's radar that I had spoken to, they didn't say anything to me about it. And if anybody had been predicting this, it was news to me. So this was, I think, quite a big shocker to the industry, and exciting news, as you say. So I kind of want to look at this from three different perspectives. The first you already hit on, Tim, which was the stock price. So let's kind of circle back. Snap had the ballyhooed IPO back in 2021 at $18 a share, if everybody remembers. And then it actually elevated up to about $23 a share and then has deflated ever since. It's been down in the $6 range, as you mentioned, $8.14 before the announcement today. So I think this tells me that I don't think Snap saw a way that they were going to organically ever get back to that $18 or $23 share price. And having the buyout, accepting a buyout at $10.75, which is, again, higher than what it was trading at, but well below where I think the initial expectations were for the company. Clearly, when they had the IPO and what it had gotten to pre-pandemic, as we all know, a lot of stocks suffered in the pandemic era. Yeah. But it's a little bit of a surrender, I would call it, from that standpoint, that they sold at that price. Of course, obviously, $1.4 billion nothing to sneeze at. The second part I want to look at is through distribution. This clearly creates the 300-pound gorilla on the distribution side. ADI is very dominant in the security space. They have been for decades and decades. I've been in the industry for 30 plus years. They were, always, the gorilla in the security space. And then Snap has become that in the custom AV space. Both companies have been strategically buying up smaller regional players over the past 5 or 6 years and consolidating. Now to bring this all together, it's a juggernaut. Is the best way I could describe it on the distribution standpoint. The third part of interest to me is going to be the control panel side of this. So ADI or Residio, the parent, is the owners of what was originally Hidemco and then became Honeywell, as we all know. So the leading control panel on the security space. Control4 is the leading control panel in the custom AV space, the smart home AV space. I think the real differentiators there only are really that Control4 has AV element control and Residio does not. It does have lighting, has lighting control and climate control and obviously security. And they had, over the years, I think Residio acquired Whisker Labs a few years ago that has some real cool energy management elements to it where they can read different signatures of different devices in the home. So the Hidemco, again, I'm old school here. The Hidemco panel, that Residio panel is a very intelligent security panel. I'm going to be curious to how they define those two panels in the market now. Are they going to try and keep them both as a better best solution out there for the market? Are we going to see the capabilities combine into a singular panel? Because we know the security integrators are already trying to elevate into custom AV smart home space and add more elements to their service offerings. So it could be, we're seeing a migration that's happening of, a lot of integrators eschewing doing control at all. They're have individual apps, an individual Sonos app, an individual Lutron app, whatever it might be. So maybe the control conflict between those two panels isn't such a big deal because they see this as a somewhat diminishing market. I don't know, but I'll be very, very curious to see where this shakes out at the control panel side.
All right, Brian, from your standpoint, what does this mean to the industry?
I think Jason is spot on. I also would add that the AV companies are migrating towards security. So while security is going to AV is going back to security. And let's not forget that under the Snap umbrella is the Claire brand for security. And so it adds another element. I look at it as a distributor side. If I'm on the ADI team and Snap is moving into your backyard and they're gobbling up other distributors. And so I think it could be the best of both worlds. We're going to have to wait to see how this thing shakes out. I think the Control4 dealers, near and dear to my heart from my previous history, I think have been kind of in this lost limbo way under the Snap umbrella after they got acquired. The business model kind of just sat stale for a while as they continued to build up the distribution brand. There's always been, from the dealer side, a sense of that the Control4 protected brand under the dealership umbrella was going to be sold massive. And in reading a lot of the reviews today, now that question is even more apparent. You take the combination of Snap announcing Connect and announcing Assist, it brings you down a path to where I could go to an ADI counter, buy a Control4 piece, and get support from a dealer that is under the Assist portion. So what Snap announced 3 months ago is that part of this long process that they've been building out. I think Jason's also right in the fact that it's a little bit of a surrender. It's almost like they didn't know what to do with that control side of the business. Residio, I think, from a control side, obviously in the thermostat space, security space, and the ADI world, understands maybe a little bit better than Snap did. It's going to be a wait and see. But my phone's been blowing up today as people from my past life have been calling me. I woke up to a wow. That was the first text message. And I'm like, what do you mean, wow? And then I saw the news. So, yeah, like you said, we could talk all day on this.
Finally, we get to talk about Sonos. They had a very interesting year, to say the least. They released a couple of wonderful new products like the Era 100 speaker, the Era 100 Pro speaker, the new Ace headphones, the Arc Ultra, to add to that wonderful list. They also released an update to their app that not only caused a stir in our community, it hit, the internet, it hit every customer who has ever used their product, and it hit them squarely in their second quarter. And that's not a euphemism. At one point, there was so much Sonos to talk about that we dedicated an entire episode just to them. On episode 432, I talked to Mark Feinberg and Todd Anthony Puma to discuss what in the world was going on with Sonos.
You know, as for myself, as I use Sonos more as a media streamer with my Crestron systems, and it's been working great. It's been the most solid system that we have. It's user-friendly. It's been a brick. It's been absolutely the only product that we offer that we have the most consistency on. And that's what I kind of loved about Sonos is originally I would bash them and say, they're not for the CI channel. They're not for us. They're against us. And Mark would be my witness to that on multiple different CDs we would occur and would go to. And now I'm kind of thinking to myself is they don't even like their own customers, let alone the CI channel, because you have to hate us or hate the community or hate your customer base in order to release something like this. What kind of ignorance does it take for whoever developed this? And, you know, it's like you were stating, it's a large company. It's not one individual that's making the decision. It's a farm of engineers. It's a farm of hopefully beta testers and dealers that are going through this. And when they said, let's push this, was it one of those things that they pushed it because they had to hit a timeline or they had to put something new out, that they just wanted to get it out there and think, hey, you know what? We see all these flaws. Nobody's going to notice them. Is that the question there? Or is that what they have done? Because it's self-sabotage in a sense. And I've never seen a company that has done something of this large of scale. They're acting like an immature company that just became to market. Someone new. This is like an Autonomics. Like, I'm not stating Autonomics has done this, but it's more of the size and the scale of Autonomics of a company like that to more be kind of prone to this kind of release and what they push forward. What I'm more worried about right now is our services to our clients. When the customers know something that's so stable as Sonos and something they're consistently using, and now how do we speak to this? How do we communicate with them? Do we just point the finger and say, hey, listen, you know, they suck. What are we going to do? These guys suck. But we can't. We have to sit there and give them the facts. When is this timeline going to be given to us when this is going to be resolved? For me, it should have been resolved yesterday. Or they should have reversed it and put it back to the original app and kind of said, hey, listen, you know, we found our issues, own it, and move on from there. But I don't believe they have at this point. Am I correct? Has anything been announced?
They definitely haven't rolled back. They've kind of dug their heels in on it. And in what I've read, it is incredibly challenging to roll back a system that's installed back to S2. I think there's a way to do it. There is a workaround, but it seems to be incredibly frustrating. Mark, Todd brings up a great point, right? The communication of this is, I take issue with it. Now, I took issue with their communication when they went from original Sonos and split to S1 and S2. And like, heck, you and I've talked about this multiple times. We as integrators were on the front lines of getting bashed by customers for that. This is going to be that same issue. And if you read through, you know, some of the forums or some of the Reddit channels, integrators are getting lit up for this. So how do integrators deal with the communication of this? How should Sonos be dealing with the communication of this? Is there anything anybody can do, or is this just a, hey, we're going to push this and it is what it is?
Yeah, I mean, at least the difference here between S1 and S2 is initially when S2 came out, they were bricking S1 only product. So at least they did reverse that, right? That was like a poor business decision. This was a poor technical execution. It wasn't the intention wasn't to brick systems here. So it's a technical mistake. It's a business mistake to release a not fully baked app, but it was the technical issues they're facing are not intentional. Whereas initially saying we're going to brick S1 was intentional. So we're getting less heat on that.
Let me just, sorry, I want you to answer the communication issue, but I do have a quick like sub question maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think that this was tested on the general populace as far as in their beta testing? Do you think it was the random homeowner who's bought something off Amazon or Best Buy and had it delivered and they've got 2 zones, opposed to our channel who has, our average customer, I think, has like 7 to 9 devices? Do you think that was the breakdown?
I don't know. I do know there were dealers that were in the beta test. I've heard that from Sonos employees that there were, Sonos dealers were in the beta. I don't know on the end user level if they have end users who beta test software or not. I'm surprised that these issues weren't surfaced. I mean, it just sounds like the people who are beta testing it were just like, even opening up existing systems is problematic now. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how it was all missed, but and maybe it's a back end thing. I mean, they have released 2 app updates in the last few days to address some of the more critical issues with, getting stuck in an update loop and things like that. And as a direct dealer, I've gotten those emails that they have pushed some of those updates. The communication, I think as Todd spoke about, I think you may have mentioned as well, we're, reaching out to clients and saying, you may be running into some Sonos issues. Know you're not alone. Know that Sonos is working on it. There's not much we can do at this point for you. It's been, a poor execution on an update, and they're working to fix things as fast as they can. Unfortunately, some of your Sonos zones may not be usable until this kind of all settles down, and we're holding off other than critical needs on service calls because most of the time we can't solve it either. It's just a technical issue that we can't get past.
But here's the thing, right? It feels like we're an industry of finger pointers, right? From our customers. The customers don't know any better. They always see me when they call us. Oh, it's not us. It's actually the cable company. Oh, you know what happened? Apple did an update and the CEC broke. Oh, you know what happened now is the Sonos system went down because Sonos is on drugs, and we tell our kids not to do drugs, but they don't listen.
I agree with you, Todd. But let me ask you this though. It sucks because the optics look terrible as integrators, right? Yeah. Because we're all, not always, but typically we're pointing the finger at the supplier. Mm-hmm. At the same time, typically it's the supplier's fault.
Yes.
Right.
As integrators, there is not a single thing we could have done to prevent our clients from executing this upgrade. We can't block it.
Nope.
We can't control what settings they have on their app store.
Right.
Right. There's not a single thing we can do. So yeah, it makes us look dumb. But at the same time, it is what it is.
I sort of think the only way we look a little, not better, but not as bad in this one is that it's a self-contained ecosystem in Sonos. It's like, okay, your Sonos isn't working. It's Sonos's fault. When we're blaming the cable company because the modem is a piece of crap, well, we spent X thousands of dollars with you on this network. Why isn't it working? And then we're pointing the finger at the cable company. Or we spent all this money on this name your control system, Control 4, Crestron system, and I can't watch TV, and it's the cable box. Right, because they're more integrated systems than the other things. This Sonos is a standalone kind of ecosystem. So I think I'm feeling, at least for my clients, they're getting it a little bit more. It doesn't feel as finger pointing because it's like, okay, this app changed, and they see a direct relationship. This app changed and things don't work now. They're seeing the direct relationship.
Lastly, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening, watching, subscribing, all of those fun things, for following along with all the fun that we have on this show all throughout the year. We are extremely grateful that you watch and listen and hopefully enjoy what we're talking about. If you'd like to connect with me, you can do that. I'm at Matt D. Scott on Twitter, X, and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you would check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.